Welcome to Great Match Generator on the Social Suplex Podcast Network, and um, we have a bit of change here. Greg's no longer going to be joining us, so it's just me and Matt. We wish Greg the best in his future endeavors, but it's okay. But
yeah. Hope Greg's doing well, and then his opinions will be missed on the show. But yeah, things happen, life happens. It's no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. We made up, but I feel like it's best to have him off the podcast, but it's okay. But we have 4 great matches today. I'm really looking forward to chopping up about these great matches.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Fritz von Erich versus Giant Baba from JWA December 3rd, 1966. Then originally we were going to do a Pioneer Senshi match from 1989, but we couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, proving to be a kind of tricky one.
Which proves to be kind of tricky. Only one person on the forum actually posted about it. We tried to get in contact with that person. Jet lag.
Yeah, but one day down the road we'll get it.
One day down the road we'll get to that match again, and then if we have to switch it. So instead, in lieu of recent news, we decided to switch with Terry Funk versus Atsushi Onita, exploding barbed wire, in lieu of recent news.
Yeah, figured it seemed reasonable to put the most famous exploding barbed wire death match, I think, given everything that happened at Revolution and all of the fallout from that. So a good excuse to rewatch it.
And then we go from that brutality to even more brutality. Aja Kong versus Yumika Hotta from All Japan Women. Was this a Dream Slam match?
I don't have that in front of me off the top of my head or on my notes here, but no, maybe, I don't know. 124.94.
124.94. And then we go to even more brutality. This was a brutal episode.
Yeah.
All these matches have brutal written all over them. As Sandman versus Sabu. Stairway to Hell. And that's just brutal in like the most ridiculous terms.
Yeah, from 110.98, the kind of, I don't know.
ECW House Party was the event called, which is not on the WWE Network. We had to scour that one too.
Yeah, it's a little kind of like a strangely maybe under the radar ECW match, but yeah, I don't know that I ever actually seen this before prepping for this episode. So interesting.
Let's go in date order. Giant Baba, Fritz von Erich. And really, I just think this is awesome. I like this better than the Destroyer match.
Oh, really? Interesting.
That we watched. And Destroyer's great in this one, but Fritz.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a shorter match, right? It's kind of the Destroyer Baba match is kind of a investment. You got to put some time into it, but this is a much shorter, digestible match, I think. So that probably has something to do with it. But yeah, it's an absolutely great match.
Yeah, it was interesting just to see Baba in like a brawl element.
Yeah, so that's what this is this. I sort of kept referring to it as it's kind of like a brawl that should happen outside of a bar in like Alabama or something, but it's happening
in Texas.
Japan. Yeah, or in Texas, or so something to that effect. But it's happening in a ring in Japan instead. And Fritz really, I think, carries a lot of the ethos of the match on his shoulders. He's just mean. He's just a mean dude in this match, menacing the entire time. And so that is such a great kind of villain for Baba to play off of too, especially kind of younger Baba, who's a little bit more mobile than some of the later
Oh yeah,
matches.
he was a lot more mobile in this one
So
versus
yeah,
the Destroyer match 6 years later,
yeah,
72,
it's
73.
yeah, it
Even
was
then, it was
yeah.
like you could tell like the gigantism really
Mhm.
got to him.
Yeah, and Bubba's never, his appeal has never been work rate, right? Like
No.
he's not this like athletic, um, CrossFit kind of wrestler. He's a storyteller. He's drama. He's timing, and I think that they kind of nail that for the most part in this match too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then I just want to shout out it's Prime Fritz Von Erich because Fritz, he might be my favorite Von Erich, like favorite or second favorite Von Erich from what I've seen of the Von Erichs.
Yeah, I haven't seen a ton of Fritz matches. I've really only seen, well, I've seen a few others, but the two that stand out are actually two Baba matches. They have another one a little bit later that I like as much or more than this one actually, but they're both great. So I think kind of this match is it kind of happens. It's a 2 out of 3 falls match, and I think each fall kind of represents a different act of this play a little bit. So the first one is very much Baba overcoming the tough guy villain, where Fritz comes in hot and Baba makes the kind of heroic comeback and gets the first fall. And the second fall is really my favorite part of the match. It's the grimy bar fight in a wrestling ring.
Yeah.
They're on the ground punching each other, like just laying down on this, like beside each other, just throwing shots and kicks and just scratching and clawing. And that's, that's the one that Fritz wins, obviously, given it's a 2 out of 3. And then the third fall is somewhat similar to the second fall. You get kind of a little bit of that same dynamic, but um, the end gets a little kind of off the rails as
Yeah, as
Fritz just
Fritz
kind of
brings in the
goes,
chair.
yeah, he goes bonkers, kind of realizing, I think, that he's not going to get the best of Baba. Baba has this tendency in some of his matches to, he gives a lot at the beginning and then kind of overtakes the person. Inoki does this too, actually, overtakes them, and by the end, it's just so clear that who the better man is. The momentum shift is like a big part of the storytelling. And so here, Fritz, before he like ends up taking the fall, cuts it off and busts out a chair, and we kind of have the DQ finish in the melee. But a ton of fun. I think if it wasn't for, if the ending were maybe a little bit more satisfying, this might rank even higher for me, and I have it pretty high. But it might even be a legitimate contender if that finish would have been a little bit more satisfying.
Yeah. Sorry, my dad was distracting me. I'm actually at my dad's house, but um, yeah, I totally agree with what you were saying about like Fritz realizing like he's not gonna win this, he's not gonna get the best of Baba, and then the chaos happened, and then the post match was awesome too.
Yeah. It's a great brawl in the post match. It's a lot of fun.
Where would you rate this?
I give it 4.5. I
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at here.
yeah,
Four and a half.
I'd watched it. I kind of went on a Baba and Inoki tear recently, and this was in that. And so maybe about a month or 2 months ago, I watched this, and I had it at 4.25 that time, and this time I liked it even more, so I bumped it up a little bit. So who knows, this match? Obviously it's been around a while, but it I already kind of like it more with time and with watching it again. So it could be a match that I ultimately consider down the road. But right now, like very solid showing, 4.5. And parts of this are pretty elite.
Yeah, I really like this a lot. And it shows like 60s wrestling and 70s wrestling is not just that championship wrestling style.
Yeah, you've got, this is a brawl. This is a brawl. I mean, Baba's bleeding in this. This is very different than maybe that stereotype. And I think that's the other
That
thing.
opened my eyes. That opened my eyes. Like, this is a brawl. I can get into this.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk about it as we go, because like you said, there's just four. Like all wrestling is violent, but there's definitely like more violent wrestling than some, and all of these kind of represent different versions of that. And I think this old simple brawl where they're not, the real story here is not what they're doing, it's that they're selling you on the emotion of this fight, this the malice of Fritz and the heroic comeback of Baba. And I think when people talk about like how great old school wrestling was, that's kind of what they're talking about. And that's, I don't know.
Well,
I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard to do that with more moves, if that makes sense.
I
It's a
agree.
very different kinds of appeal, and I think kind of equally cool in their own way. But I do just have such a soft spot in my heart for this kind of simple throw in hands. The other thing we should mention is how well they do
punch.
Putting over the claw. I was gonna say putting over the claw in this.
Oh yeah, putting over the claw is this like dangerous move.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I did differently this time. Is I just watched the matches and like
Sure.
not taking notes. I'm doing this based on memory and based on what the forum says here.
Sure.
And they did mention like the claw, because I was like, yeah, the claw was really protected here.
Well, it's the great thing was, so Baba gets the first pin, and right after that, when he gets up to celebrate, Fritz locks the claw on between the falls. So they have this kind of extended rest between the falls where Baba is selling the claw, and then right out the gates in the second fall, they do like 30 seconds of Fritz going for the claw and Baba just holding him inches away from his head, like holding his hand. So
Right.
they really like, they get a lot of drama out of when they implement it, how they implement it, how it like informs Baba's selling, all of these kinds of things that are really kind of pretty nuanced actually. And it's simple, right? The claw's not like a flashy move, but they get so much out of it in this match, and it's one of the things I really like about it.
Yeah, it seems like simplicity was the way to go, and it really showed.
Hmm?
It really showed that simplicity was the
Yeah.
way to go, and
Yes.
you know. But we move from that brutality. There's a thread in all this, to more brutality in the form of exploding barbed wire.
Yeah.
Which very similar. I think I think this is a good segue because it's memorable. They basically work a brawl in trying to escape this barbed wire.
Hmm. It's These matches are kind of, I think, interesting and almost like quasi controversial in terms of like how people talk about them. Um, I really, really like these high end exploding barbed wire death matches. But if
Yeah.
you go into them expecting
A
a
work
kind of
rate masterpiece.
well, even a traditional Terry Funk brawl, like you're not getting that, because all of this is built around avoiding the barbed wire. All of this is built around, can you keep
Avoid the barbed wire.
yourself from blowing up? And they do a really good job of selling that throughout. Onita's competing in the 90s with All Japan and New Japan for attention, and he's not that kind of athlete. So what does he do? He creates a completely different kind of wrestling promotion. And so this is, you have to kind of appreciate it on its own merits. You can't expect
You have
what it's
to
not gonna
appreciate
be.
for what the spectacle is, and not the merits of like it as a wrestling match.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I think it has merits as a wrestling match. It's just a different kind of wrestling match. It's I think we talk, not you and I necessarily, but like generally speaking, right? We talk about, what wrestling is in kind of simplistic and narrow ways sometimes. And the more you watch wrestling for this kind of project, the more varied you see it can be. So, I mean, sure, there's like you're not getting the athleticism of something like, I don't know, a Kenny Omega match or something like that, but you're still getting drama. And to me, drama is as important as anything in a wrestling match. And so I actually I'm not super high on death matches generally, but I'll be a pretty big defender of something like this, even though it's kind of physically limited in what actually happens. The ending is still one of the best endings in all of wrestling to me.
Oh yeah, it is.
And
They were trying to do that ending.
yeah, they were trying to do something very similar.
AEW.
Yeah, they were trying to do something very similar, and unfortunately, that a technical mistake. It's it sucks, but it is what it is. And but like here, it's not just the ending, but like, man, Onita's pretty legitimately tore up. Like,
Oh yeah.
start to finish, that barbed wire is real, and that barbed wire is cutting, and you can see
Oh
when he
yeah, that
goes
barbed
in,
wire is sharp.
when he goes in the first time, he comes out kind of really sliced up, and they do lots of little things to accent that, right? So there's a spot right after that first explosion where Funk is tearing at Onita's shirt in the back.
Yeah.
So for the rest of the match, it kind of looks like the explosion blew a hole in Onita's shirt, right? Like,
Oh
so
yeah. I remember.
little tiny things like that are really nice about this. And obviously, like, Onita winds up with a laceration on his hand that he's selling really well. I mean, maybe because it's real and it's actually painful and dangerous, but he's selling it like his hand is mangled. I think my only real problem, the only reason this isn't an actual contender for my, like, maybe top 100 list, is that the DDT finish felt a little underwhelming,
Yeah.
given everything that they did. But then the idea that Onita, they have a little brawl after, and Onita throws the ref out of the ring, which I loved, and then gets out of the ring himself, but Funk's still laying in the ring, and Onita comes back in to cover him up, to save this guy that he just went
And
through
then the
broken.
music they play after it
Yeah,
is
it's very cinematic,
one of
right? It's
one of the most cinematic things that cinematic wrestling cannot approach.
yeah, it was really nice, and like, I don't know if it's in production, but there's like this stunned silence over the crowd after the explosion right before the music hits. And so even if that's in production, it's still awesome. Like, it's just the way they ended it was visceral and compelling. And so I still, like, I love this match, and I think um it is a masterclass in storytelling, and two tough guys who know the kind of story who actually, like, tell a really kind of touching story of a different kind of masculinity, like, not just like sort of violence against one another, but respect that grows from combat and from being in this really stressful situation. So I think it's really kind of great, and I think it deserves the praise it gets, and might be a little too maligned from those who aren't really into deathmatch wrestling. And I'm also, again, I'm not generally into deathmatch wrestling, but this kind of thing I'm very into.
Yeah, I was very much into the spectacle of it all. The entrance was very cool with Wild Thing, everyone singing it. That was awesome. The ref's outfit, we have to mention it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I don't even know how to explain it.
It was a beekeeper outfit.
Yeah, it was a big silver beekeeper outfit.
and but you harped on the things I was going to harp on this match, and I re- I really like I really like the spot where Funk goes for the spinning toe hold, and then he's kicked off, and then the big explosion comes
Yeah.
right before the DDT. I thought that was a nicely set up spot. Um,
Yeah, really good stuff.
I think this is a good 3.5 star match. Um,
Oh, really? I'm way higher on that.
it's 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 really good. I don't call it great.
Yeah, I call this great. I call this elite. I give it 4 3/4, because
Oh,
I think it's maybe, it does things better than any other wrestling match I can think of. I can't think of a wrestling match that sells this kind of emotion between the two
Yeah,
combatants at
I
the
could see
end.
where you're going with this, but
So yeah, this does a thing better than any other wrestling match, and for that I give
four
it
and
four
three
and three
quarters.
fourths. I don't give it five because like I said, the DDT for the actual finish of the match itself was a little flat to me. But yeah, outside of that, this is probably my second favorite exploding barbed wire death match ever.
Behind AEW. Just kidding.
No, I actually thought that match was pretty good, but I
I thought
did.
that match was actually pretty good too.
But yeah, no, that's not
But the
quite
ending
not quite
sucked.
that good.
What was the first?
Megumi Kudo versus Combat Toyota.
Oh yeah, from FMW.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. I actually may prefer. I may be with Superstar Sleaze and prefer the Funk Sabu barbed wire
Yeah.
because it's a little more athletic. It's a little more dangerous.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Even
there's lots of good ones, and I think there's, I don't necessarily think there's like a wrong answer. I think this one's championed for a reason by a lot of people, and it's not just because you
it's
know
an exploding bird. No, I agree with that.
it's not
I
just because
agree
it's
with that.
Onita, and Onita's kind of the king of them, and then Funk is maybe the greatest pro wrestler ever. It's pretty high profile in that regard. Um, but yeah, I mean, different strokes, different folks. So this is right up my alley, and every time I watch it, I kind of like it a little bit more.
Now we get to one of your favorite matches:
Yeah.
Yumika Hotta versus Aja Kong. Man, this is brutal. Oh my
Yeah,
god!
this is just a sprint of violence.
And like the captioned promo before, it's basically Hotta trying to prove herself to Aja Kong.
Yeah, I have not actually watched the ones that were recently posted with the captions, so I actually don't have that background of what's going on.
Said. Um, it's basically like Hotta's trying to prove herself to Aja Kong, and it's ruthless. It's just ruthless, and Kong gives everything to not let go of her throne.
Yeah, it's so I mean, yeah, that makes sense that, Kong is kind of the Haas of all Japan women, and Hotta is she's pretty legit, and she's not a small woman. She kind of matches her in terms of stature almost. And this is stiff strikes from the very beginning that go into a busted up hand and some of just the hardest to watch handwork you'll ever see.
Oh yeah,
Uh, into kind of bomb throwing at the end, where they've been throwing bombs throughout, but they're really kind of they're putting on the suplexes and those kinds of things to try to finish it and end this whole thing. And so I think it's like a really nice logic to it, a really nice sort of story being told. And in terms of the actual in ring, the physicality, it's hard for me to think of two people who go harder, and that's putting it right up against, in this particular grouping, right up against some matches where people are really laying into each other. And I still
yeah,
think this is, this is a Haas fight, and it's everything I want from a Haas fight.
yeah. This was amazing.
Yeah, I'd also sort of add this has really good visuals, so that's the thing I think. I think a lot of great wrestling will do is it'll take advantage of like all the little moments where people are selling, and the camera angles will just catch the right thing. So there's a moment where Hotta is in a north-south choke. Aja's got Hotta in this north-south choke, which is essentially Aja is on top of her, and they're kind of like facing opposite directions, and she's got a headlock on her. And so Hota's head is kind of in Aja's armpit, And it's not like technically proficient the way it's on, like it doesn't actually how the move would work, but like in terms of their body positioning. But Hota's like selling like her facial expression and
Yeah.
the way the camera catches it, just so cool. And they've got a lot of those little moments, especially later when Hota's selling the hand so well. Because again, it's busted up and looks awful. And I also really loved the end of this match. So it ends with them on the second rope, and Hotta goes for what looks kind of like a Canadian destroyer off the second rope, and Aja just kind of falls back on top of her, and that's the way Aja wins. It's not that Aja did some great move; it's that Hotta took a big chance, it didn't work, and she gambled and lost. And I really love that ending for this match particularly.
Yeah, I really like that. And Kataviri, who uploaded the match with context on
Nice.
YouTube, said this. Yumika had been going around with her tough girl gimmick saying Asha doesn't scare her, and got an upset pin on Asha in a non-title match a few weeks before. Asha believes that it's her responsibility as a WWWA singles champion to make it self-evident that they're the best and they're not a real champion. Hotta needs to be firmly put in her place, and Yumiko is friends with Akira Hokuto.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, so that's the extra context that Kataviri had with that.
Yeah, that's helpful, and I think all of this entire match makes complete sense with that. Like, so when you were saying you're going through that, I was like, yeah, that all checks out. That's in the match. That's it's worked like that. Their physical storytelling is lining up with the broader narrative arc.
Yeah. So this is like 4.5 stars in my book.
Yeah, this is a 5-star classic to me. This is on my list. This is securely on my top 100 list. I think, again, I like when matches are the best at a thing, and this is probably the second best Hoss fight I've ever seen, next to Stan Hansen Andre. But this elevates a certain kind of violence and physicality that is really, really hard to touch.
And then we go to our last match, Sandman versus Sabu. 110.98 in Stairway to Hell.
Yeah.
Oh my god. These two try to murder each other with weapons. Crowd brawling, weapon shots, tables, ladders, chairs. It was a lot better work than a lot of the TLC matches today. It felt a lot more dangerous. I'll give it that. The Sandman suplexing the ladder spot was one of the stupidest spots I've ever seen, but I loved it.
Yeah, that was incredible. I kind of adored that. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't come in with high expectations for this. I often kind of think that ECW, it's a promotion that for my taste in wrestling was great in the moment. It's great if you can kind of immerse yourself in the show or in a series of shows and kind of get that feeling that ECW had, because it was very much an emotional ethos, pathos driven kind of promotion. But I don't often think that like their best matches hold up alongside best matches from other promotions. And so I didn't really think it was like that this was going to be a match that I thought of as a great match as much as I thought of as a really fun spectacle. And I was kind of sold on it. I kind of think it's at least close to great. This is exactly what these two should be doing. They're physically limited. They're not, I mean, even Sabu, this is sort of both of their physical peaks, I think, probably is around 98. And neither one of them, again, are like these, they're not the CrossFit or even sort of, you think of like other great athletes in wrestling, even from the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like these two need to just be kind of reckless and throw their bodies and everything else at each other. And this match was perfect for that. That's exactly what they did. The like you said, the suplexing the ladder into the crowd was fucking bonkers. Like that's one of the craziest things I've ever seen in wrestling. And the fact that there's even like a little sort of low key spot later where Sabu is doing a springboard with the barbed wire in his hands over the top rope, and Sandman moves, so Sabu hits the railing, but then he just kind of, in doing so, tosses that bale of barbed wire into the crowd, which is like, again, crazy. That's insanity. So that's all this match is start to finish, is just two guys beating on each other and throwing themselves and everything around them at one another. Sabu's using scissors in this match.
Yeah,
there's
they're
another.
throwing caution to the wind.
Yeah,
They are throwing caution to the wind, and that's what I love about this match. It's just they're throwing caution to the wind, and it feels dangerous.
Yeah, it's organic. It's nothing sort of planned here. You know, you've got Sandman like just kind of jumping onto Sabu through tables rather. Like it wasn't really a leg drop, it wasn't really an elbow. It was just kind of Sandman jumping onto another person, and that's the offense. It's just this kind of rough around the edges, not polished at all, organic feel. And I think that Sabu is athletic enough here. Sabu was actually a pretty incredible athlete, but like he wasn't a precision athlete for a lot of the times. And so you see some of that where, you know, how he throws his body at Sandman here. They complement each other really, really well. And I came out really kind of loving this match. I thought visuals were great in this, particularly at the end. You know, Sandman wins and walks out. He looks like he's been through it. I thought everything held together pretty well. They didn't get too distracted. Nothing felt too contrived, given all the weapons they were using. And so, yeah, it was just kind of.
Yeah, I think this was really good. I thought this wasn't going to age well. I told you
Mhm.
straight up. I was like, I don't think this is going to age well. It aged fine.
Yeah.
It aged pretty fine, and it aged relatively well with some of the deathmatch stuff we see today,
Sure.
and some of
Yeah.
the brawls we see today. So with that, I give it 3 3/4.
Oh yeah. Again, I'm much higher on this. I think I probably gave it 4.25, maybe 4.5 if I watched it again later. But yeah, of this style, this is what I want to see. This gave me kind of a lesser version of Necro Butcher versus Super Dragon, which is one of my favorite matches
Oh
ever.
yeah.
Where it's two people who don't mind taking a beating or giving a beating, just constantly elevating the violence. And they captured lightning in a bottle. And you know, I'm kind of having trouble thinking of an ECW match I enjoy more than this, to be perfectly honest. So I came away pretty
Maybe
high on this.
maybe like the technical stuff I may be higher on ECW, but a true ECW style match, yeah, maybe I should go 4 on it.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it is whatever. I was pretty surprised, but I also just finished it, so you know, it's tough to say how you really feel about a match when you first watch it. We have to
Yeah,
see how it ages, if it holds up, if I watch it again in a year or something like that.
yeah.
But this go, I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to anybody who's not squeamish around blood and chaos.
Yeah. So next episode, we are watching Jerry Lawler versus Dutch Mantel, 3/29/82 from CWA. Then we were watching Kazuchika Okada versus Kenny Omega, not the really long one, their G1 match from 2017. Ric Flair versus Blackjack Mulligan, Texas Death Match. So we got our first Flair action. Win Great Match Generator against Blackjack Mulligan in a Texas Death Match from 78 at Jim Crockett Promotions. And then we go to SummerSlam, where we go to WWF's 1992 Bret Hart Davey Boy Smith.
Nice.
in Wembley.
Nice.
Plug, Chug.
Yeah, so Twitter at Markout Mountain. Check out the project that spawned this at GWE forums. Hold on a second. Now I've messed it up.
GWE project.freeforums.net.
Yes, thank you. GWEproject.freeforums.net for all the sort of larger conversation that goes on around these kinds of things.
Yes, so this is actually pretty good. So yeah. And thank you for joining us on the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Take care.